Okay, I gotta ask you a question. Can you squeeze me in your car on the way home if I need a ride?
Yeah. In my car?
Yeah. Before you say yeah, think about it.
Yeah. I don't know.
You don't know. Let me ask Joshua. Joshua. Let me ask you a question. What's that? then they told the truth. Okay? Of what money was. So it's the thing is,
anybody wants to call our relatives? All they got time to see questions online.
it's a live broadcast. If you have relatives at home or friends you want to call, you can get them on YouTube and type in what it is. Live, and you will be able to see this telecast live at home. So we're trying to get to as many people as we can. We don't have very much money, so we don't have a lot of money to advertise. So we're doing whatever we can to get the word out, because that's what's important, the word out. And like I said, if you have relatives at home that want to be able to see this, they will be able to see it live. For those who just came in, we're streaming live today. Anybody that you have at home that wasn't able to make it, if you have call them and tell them to go on YouTube and type in 2 countries, 1 rice, and go live, they'll be able to see the same thing you're seeing today. Just to help you out. This is what I don't see in meetings. I've been all over the state of Texas, and I don't see kids do that. It's a shame. They should be here. They should know the history, their ancestors, just like you guys. I wish more people would bring the they have kids, bring them, because they need to hear what really happened. Because this generation is the one possibly that's going to carry on this fight. Hopefully, you'll see how this all comes together, and it's going to, I'm going to tell you the truth, you're not going to like what you're going to see here today. You're going to be angry. But everything we've done up here has been documented, researched, and what you're about to see is going to make you feel angry. Because when you find out the truth of what happened to your ancestors, and how they lost their lands, and how they lost their it robbed them. We should all be roll about that. But wait till we can start the presentation, and then you're going to see what I'm talking about. And hopefully, I'm happy you all came out today. I really am. I'm very grateful that you all came out because you had busy days. But I'll be honest with you, there's 9 million descendants. There should be 10,000 people here wanting to see what's going on. I don't know how to get this, worked out or get this fired up to understand how serious this is. And we're in talks with attorneys right now, and hopefully we're going to get the right one. Because if this turns into a lawsuit, it's going to be the biggest lawsuit you've ever seen. So hopefully, more people coming. Hopefully we can get going here in a few minutes. And what else is starting? Come on in. We have t-shirts for sale. They're like this. This one is my t-shirt. It's got my name on there. My ancestor was saying that this is about, but it's not about my ancestor. It's about all of your ancestors. What I'm about to tell you today. But I'm proud of my ancestor. I wear his name on that. And like I said, we have t-shirts. to run through the history of what happened from start to finish. Along the way, I'm going to explain to you what happened, so you can understand it. This is an educational presentation. It's not only going to tell you, it's going to show you the facts. 95% of these facts were on the web, in your library. You can see them there. If you know, like I said, if you think that we're wrong on something, you can look it up yourself. You're going to find out everything here is factual. 5% of it was not at the library. The information that we have that is not where you can see it came from the Library of Congress in Washington, D.C. We've got documents that are going to blow your minds and prove to you how this injustice has to be done. Do the right thing for your ancestors. So hopefully when you start here to do this, find out what's going on. Can you guys all hear me? If I talk, because I don't know where the library is supposed to send somebody over here to put up microphones and all that, but nobody's here. I don't know what's going on. Can you hear me? Is it loud enough? Because I got a big mouth and I got a loud voice. Okay, so you all should be able to hear me. Let me tell you what kind of, before we get started, let me tell you what kind of meeting this is. If at any time you feel you need to ask a question, feel free to stop me at any point. Just put your hand up, I'll call on you, stand up and say whatever you've got to say. Either a comment, statement, or a question. I like interaction with my meetings. I don't like one-way meetings where all I do is dictate, and you never get to ask a question. I want you to ask questions. That makes me better. If I can't answer that question, we'll figure it out and get back to you. But the key is, don't let that moment go by. Ask the question, please. We're all family here. Trust me, in some way, I got to feel we're all related. Just don't want to take a while. That's okay. That's fine. We're going to talk about. Yes. Okay, where's the start? Where's the beginning? How do we get there? Oh, okay. No, I don't think so. Maybe four, maybe sure. You gonna stay with me now?
I can talk loud too.
Yeah. Living with Joe, sure you do.
Yeah.
All right. Hey. Is there anybody here that cannot speak English? Anybody? No puede hablar inglés. If we have somebody, si no tienen ayuda para interpretar or translate or whatever, we have our officer, he's walking around like how we have people help you and give you a right. Hey, come on in. No,
Okay, 1:30.
We're going to be in the Fed on the 19th. Yeah, 19th. And I think we're in about 2 years. Maybe after, I'm not sure. But we're also going to go to Albuquerque, New Mexico. They're having a huge meeting in Albuquerque, New Mexico about all of the land grants from California, Arizona, Nevada, anyone that was involved in the tree right out of big meeting in Albuquerque, New Mexico. It's very important. They have made me the keynote speaker. I'm very honored for that meeting. So I will be speaking there, and I will be giving the same presentation to them as he was. There's going to be congressmen, senators, lawyers, all kinds of people. Go ahead. Elmer, do we know if that's going to be televised on podcast in Albuquerque yet?
No, not yet.
Not yet.
Probably won't know till probably the day
We're
before.
going to try to do it, but we haven't arranged it. If you go to our website, twocountries1live.org, you will find out on that website if we're going to be live on a podcast. We'll make sure we put it on our website, twocountries1live.org. Anybody needs a little card about our organization and you want to call us, talk to us, if you want to ask a question, whatever, we have experts. We have experts who ask them. Thank you. Double month. It's a long road. right. I think that's good. You want one? Okay, no problem. Yes?
My children, when you make accusations, you certainly have the facts.
Look, this is what. Come over
Who
here.
took your land away?
Oh, this is.
The biggest thief.
See, it's kind of a whitewash screen.
Okay,
Everything is too dark around it and it's too bright, so it's trying to compensate.
I got you. Okay, that's fine. But at least they can hear us.
Yeah,
They got the audio?
Yeah.
That's fine.
yeah, but it's kind of.
It's kind of what?
Houses by that white rock. Burned up.
You can hear a lot of the background noise.
Prove that you're on this field.
Your background
on
noise.
this land since before history.
There's a lag.
You and I are still talking.
Yeah, there's a lag.
Oh, it's a time lag?
Yeah.
That's all right.
I think with a microphone would be good.
26, you can still make reservations over there. It's, yeah, the end of this month. It's a 3-day, 24, 25, 26, yeah, 3-day meeting. And everybody that is involved with the activists of the Spanish Mexican language will be there for that meeting.
Many other matters to attend to. Not an easy job, President.
Let me warn you, it's an hour long. Okay? You can do that. The only thing we don't want you to do is put it on YouTube because it conflicts with us, and that's how we raise money. Denying us the information. If it's just personally anything can happen to me. It's only an hour and about 20 minutes. Yeah, it is the 4:30, that'll be Q&A, and welcome after that done to move on and go back and, ask questions. Yeah, about an hour and 20 minutes, maybe an hour, 10 minutes, somewhere around there. Depending on if people are going to ask questions. Earlier, for some of you got here, I can show that audience, right? And if anybody wants to ask a question, don't wait till the end. Stop me right away. Raise your hand. If it's important to you, don't let me get away from that subject, because then it's hard to get back to where I was. You're going to see some amazing information here. And let me tell you, the first time I did this meeting, I was in Corpus Christi about a month ago. And there was 300 people there. And it's funny because, me being up there, you guys are looking at me, I'm looking at all you. So when I see people talking that are ahead of me, I see people getting up, I see people leaving, coming back, going back. As soon as I start talking, nobody will hear out. Because what I'm about to show you is really, you're going to want to see what's next. Because the story that I'm about to tell you has never been told ever. Nobody knows the truth you're going to hear today. Like I said, 95% of the documents you can find online or in the libraries. 5% was in the Library of Congress. And the documents you see are all real, authentic, and what you're going to hear is the story about their ancestors in their land. How are we good?
Yeah. I think you need a mic.
All right, go ahead, Mike. The meeting is going to start here. I'm going to start it now. I know you guys are busy.
Basis by the U.S. Park War.
Yeah, it's going to be the first speaker up. He's going to basically allow you to understand more about us, to have him be able to know what we're into and what we're trying to do.
Either stay with the homes in the contact territory or move back to Mexico.
I'm going to introduce
Chris with Patricia Chambers and most returning to stay in the island. Those decided to remain.
I'm going to tell you about the genealogy portion of this. And she works with us, and she comes to our meeting. divided her. So she's a very intelligent person. She is also private investigator, I'm sorry, which carries the badge. So she's very protective of your family tree or any documents that she can get for you. She's very privately about that. Secretive between you and her. So, Christian?
If you don't have a mic, I'm going to try to speak real loud for everybody, okay? First, my name is Patricia Champion. Some of you know me, some of you don't. But I am a professional genealogist. I've been doing genealogy for over 20 years. I work with attorneys and government agencies. I provide genealogy reports for them whenever they need to identify and locate who heirs are to an estate or property, such as where the bank will call you, the title company, or the attorney will contact them to do these reports. So what I do is I basically look for people like you. I look for the people who are the descendants of a particular property or money. But I generally do it for attorneys. About 11 years ago, I was contacted by an attorney out of the valley to help him in identifying and locating the heirs in Washington Checkup. That was my first introduction to land grant descendants. And ever since then, I've been working with land grant descendants and working with many land grants and thousands of heirs and been doing hundreds of reports for people. And that's what I'm here to talk to you about. So here I am. How important is your genealogy? Historically, important genealogies are recorded. Jesus had his genealogy recorded in 2 books of the Bible, Matthew and Luke. The English monarchy has had the family tree recorded ever since Alfred the Great back in 849 AD. So genealogies who are for important people are recorded. It's not just, oh yeah, I know my ancestor is so. They have to have it written down somewhere. Okay? So why is the record of your genealogy important? Think about that. Why is it important? Because it's going to be evidence, verification, confirmation, irrefutable proof of who your ancestors are. So you can't just say, oh yeah, I'm a descendant of Elvis Presley. I mean, unless I can prove it, nobody, anybody can say things like that. But when you have a report that's got the documentation connecting from you all the way to a land grant deed, you've got the proof. You've got evidence there. Nobody can say what you're not. When I prepare a genealogical report, I ask for 2 pieces of documentation per generation. Sometimes I work with generations of 8 generations, sometimes I work with 10 generations, but 2 pieces of document per generation. So if we start with the primary heirs of the living people, that would be, one of the first generations, in your parents, in your grandparents, all the way up to the land grant people. You should run to 8 to 10 generations, these 2. So if you go to look at the document, if you don't have something there or you only have one, you need to get more. Because the reason why I ask for more documentation, it's not really true, but it's because I want you to have a report. So if you have to take it to claim something, nobody can say it's not right. Nobody can say, no, it's not proof enough. It's proof. It's enough to evidence to show who you are. My reports, just so you know, the reports that I prepare have been used in court of law many times here in Texas and in other states. I have been considered an expert witness in multi-million-dollar cases where I stood in front of the judge and swore that the information in that report was correct. And he would ask me questions about the report, and that was it. But these reports will stand up in court to prove that those are the errors. So you know how important they are. For living heirs, they live to need copies of the birth certificate. I don't need the original, a copy is fine. If you're a woman and you're not using your maiden name, then you need a copy of your marriage certificate. My maiden name is Ramos, but I go by Champion with my dear husband. So therefore, I put a copy of my marriage certificate with my report, so that it shows why you need Champion. Okay? Then, if your parent, the line that you're going to go up to, if your mother's line, if she's deceased, and a copy of that death certificate. And I want a copy of her birth certificate if you can get it. Depending on of when they were born, we may or we may not even get a birth certificate. Here in Texas, biorecords started about 1903. Okay, so if you've got anything between 1906 and 1909, you can generally get it at the biorecords office in Austin or in your local county courthouse, county clerk's office. After that, you're going to have to start going to church records, baptismal, matrimonial, divorcione, and wherever your family was living, whether it was Bien, Guerrero, Camargo, Mendoza, all those places had those kind of things at the churches. So remember, 2 documents per generation. Sometimes there are instances when you cannot find a particular record. I've got 2 reports I'm trying to work on now, which they have got that problem. So you have to go to what we call secondary evidence. These are going to be like a copy of a will, a testamento for one of your ancestors, showing who the kids were, a census record, or something from the court show with a copy of the seal on it. Sometimes I get these documents in which some people in court, there's no seal, there's no signature, nothing, it's just all typed out. I can't use that. Okay, we're using something that can be used in court. Everything's got to have like a seal on it. It's got to show that that you got it from an actual authoritative agency. Please use the family trees that you guys are gathering online. Use them sparingly. Even as guides. Please, I have had people come to already to my genealogy report. They bring it to me and half the documents are all good copies of family trees. Those are not good evidence. I can't use that. Records. We need records. We need, okay. Birth certificates, marriages, certificates, matrimonials, a family tree that somebody else put up, I can't use. Why? Because when you look at a family tree on Ancestry or Family Search, somebody like you or like you or like you are putting it in there. We don't know what kind of research these people have done. And I have personally seen many of them incorrect. A lot of them are right, but many of them are incorrect. So let's say you're looking at one that's wrong. Then you copy it and put it on online. And somebody else looks at it and they copy it. And pretty soon you have a lot of family trees that are wrong. Okay? And so we've got to go back and still do the research. Even if you're getting the information from the family tree, you still need those documents. Once you actually get your genealogical report, what do I do now? Well, we can use your report for several things. One, if you can file it with the comptroller's office. If there's money there, you can do a search and there's money there for you. You can go to an attorney and get a declaration done. If you find money through a receivership, you can show their genealogical report to claim for that receivership. But whatever you do not give in your original report. So when I mean, I don't give it to your attorney, because I know attorneys that have not given it back. Okay? So make a copy and then give it to the attorney, or make a copy and give it to the comptroller, whoever you're going to be talking to, and they want a copy of it, and say, okay, let me make you a copy. But do not give the original. It's costing you money. And you may not get it back. And if you don't get it back, you've got all those documentation in there, which you might have to start all over again. So you want to be very careful on who you give your report to. Does anybody have any questions?
Do you still communicate with that attorney who mentioned the revenue details that
I did finish the my work with him, so I don't deal with him anymore. I deal with a lot of other
do you have his name and number?
Yes, I do.
Can I get that from you?
If contact me during Monday through Friday, I'll be back in front of that next week. She goes and gets a copy of my great grandfather's death certificate. She can give me a copy of that seal. That's fine. I mean, it doesn't make sure you make a copy of that seal. The Texas seal, that's all. Any other questions? It varies, because some people are just really like maybe, well, it makes a difference you very much.
Thank you, Judge.
Oh, yes, I have another.
Thank you. Buenas tardes. Primeramente, le damos gracias a Dios de darnos la oportunidad de contarnos con ustedes y con nosotros. De eso se trata, de comunicarnos, y unirnos entre todos los estudiantes ahora en este día de los originales y protecciones de la tierra, de los migrants. Spanish and Mexican. Y para por Dios, en general no podemos estar así lo que muchas gracias por venir, por estar aquí con nosotros y participar en esto. Hay muchas cosas que quiero hablar. Una de las cosas que voy a platicar es de unirnos y también de unidad en varios aspectos. Unity in a lot of areas. And voting is one. More importantly, well, they're all important. Todos son importantes. En comunicarse con uno al otro, in being able to share documents. We will share any document that we have with people. Okay? You're our primos, and we will share that. We're going to lead by example. And by that example, I hope it catches on to all of you. Because we have found a lot of people not sharing with other people, and that's a fight in its own within the land grantees and descendants. And we're not the enemy between each other. Our enemy is the state of Texas and the United States. You'll later find out through the story that Joel will present. You have a question? You had raised your hand. We need to set all fences apart, all differences that we have, try to communicate with each other, talk to each other. Because this is the only way that we're going to win this, by uniting. And by uniting, eventually this organization is going to try to unite 100,000 people or more from all of these land grants. There's probably 9 million, 5 to 9 million descendants of these land grants. And if we have 100,000 or more at our rallies, which we're planning to do rallies in Austin, Washington, D.C., and other parts of the country, okay? And that becomes powerful. That becomes very powerful as descendants for the cause of the land. By the way, my name is Arnulfo Sierra, and I belong to more than one land grant. I'll mention one is Jose Narciso Cavazos. And all of us belong to our land grantee descendants, Delmer, Joe, and myself. We're all Sierras. We still don't know if we're connected. He and I are connected. Our fathers are brothers. He and I have us and Dave and Elmer don't know if we're connected to the Sierras yet. We're connected otherwise, not to the Sierras, because we have no church there. So, saying that, this is one of the few land grants that is being run by descendants. That's where I'm trying to get to. So, we're one of you. You're one of us. And that's why we've been in the other side where following other organizations, and finally we came up with a better solution for this, because we will get to this story. It would be amazing. Anyway, the other part, the other aspect is voting part. Voting, all land grant descendants were confronted with prejudice and by the white people back then. We still have some of that fallout of prejudice in today's day. But yeah, I think it's que mexicanos, españoles, entre indios,
Donald Trump is one. This is why we need to unite our vote. We need to energize that vote by registering. And we will eventually, by becoming a big bloc as a people, we will eventually become an important bloc in the nation, which we are by numbers, but we're not by vote. And what I mean by that is that we'll have people that are running for president catering to us, all of us, because we're united as a vote. And what does that mean? I'll tell you what it means. Right now, the Supreme Court is, this case is going to go up to the Supreme Court because it deals with notifying If I seem a little bit nervous because I'm not in touch with too much with this, with what's going on at the top, so please understand. I apologize. Monday. Thank you. Thank you. Thank you.
Sure, go ahead. Please.
Thank you.
Father God, we come right now, Lord, and we have the family, Lord, who have an emergency, Lord God. And I pray right now that you be with them, Father, that the doctors and all the nurses and everybody on staff on standby will take care of the situation. And God, we ask you all upon you to heal that, because it's not serious, Lord, and that it all will be fairly done, Lord God. I pray that this meeting right now is like interruptions, a lot of things going on, Father God, that you want us to know the truth. We ask you to help us, God, to bring the truth out of the darkness for us so that we can learn what we can do to what make it wrong to make it right, Father. In Jesus' name.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Peter, I got to step out. See, I'm going to talk to me.
I'll take over.
The ambulance, I need to talk to you.
Sorry. All right, welcome. I apologize for all of the little glitches in here. We're a small organization. We only deal with volunteers, and it's just 3 of us that are running this organization, and we go all through the state. It's a big state, believe me. Everything's right. Anyways, this is Elmer Garcia. Elmer is our technical, and he's also a manager of the organization, but he is and what we're going to do is we're going to run through a litany of slides. But I'm going to give you a presentation that is going to be very important for you to understand where you're at as far as your ancestors' lives. All right, are we ready? Good, Ellen? All right, that's our names right there. Again, my name is Jose Esteban Jr., and that was our mover who was having an emergency on. I apologize for that. And that's Elmer Sierra, our manager of our communications. And right now I'm going to start this presentation, so it's showtime. If you've got a question, please jump on. You can stop me, ask me, don't let me get by it, because it's going to be a long presentation, and you're going to wish you would stop me. All right, this man is the man that is responsible for your ancestors losing their lands. Do you know what that is, son? don't know who it is? Okay, well, that's a young guy, it's okay. This man's name was Adolf Hitler. And he is the guy that is going to turn the country and the world on its head. And it's going to affect your ancestors in a way you never understood. He was the man that was creating so much strife and problems. Everybody knows the history of Adolf Hitler, except for the little guy. And the bottom line is, the President of the United States did not know how to deal with it. And you're going to see how this all played out. What I'm about to show you is like not a murder mystery, but a crime scene. I'm going to give you the body. I'm going to show you where the weapon is and all the blood stains. At the end of this meeting, I want you to tell me if you can connect the dots to this mystery, because it's very simple. If you listen very carefully to what is about to unfold, you're going to be able to tell me who was wrong, who was the real villain. Are you ready? This is about the Spanish and Mexican land grants between 1765 and 1846. The problem with this is most of you don't realize that when your ancestors were alive back then, they had life pretty good. They had a big parcel of land that they had bought. They were honest, decent, noble people, your ancestors. Keep in mind what I'm saying to you, because that little sentence of honest, decent, noble people is going to be the reason they pulled the biggest scam on them, because they were such noble people, and that's our problem today. Anyways, your ancestors had a tract of land between 1765 and 1846. And then this happened. The Mexican-American War, and things started to get real different. Why? Because now there's Anglos in their lands. And your ancestors owned huge parts of Texas. Well, the Anglos didn't like that. They were here to take the land away from your ancestors. It is documented in so many different books, so there's no doubt, shouldn't be any doubt in your mind, that your ancestors lost their lands because of the opportunities that were coming in from the other states. They saw this land, they took it. It was very simple, because they came in with 6 guns, and they had rifles, and the bottom line is, your ancestors were noble people, and they didn't want to fight the Anglos, because they owned them. But the Anglos wanted. So that war went on for 2 years. At the end of the 1848, the war was settled with this. The Treaty of Hidalgo Guadalupe. The Treaty of Hidalgo Guadalupe is very important to you, because you're about to see how this all ties together. And this treaty has language, it has articles in it. Article 8 and 9 and 10 were specifically for your ancestors. In this treaty of Guadalupe, all of these provisions that they had in here were supposed to be to help protect your ancestors. If you read at the bottom, other provisions stipulated the Texas border at the Rio Grande, Article 5, protection of property and civil rights of Mexican nationals. That was your ancestors at the time. They were Mexican nationals. Even though some of them, or a lot of them, were Spanish. Remember, Spain owned Mexico, or Texas for a while too. Living with new border, Articles 8 and 9, U.S. promised to police its side of the border, Article 11, and the arbitration of future disputes. So they had language in there to protect your ancestors. And they had language in there to say, if you own this land now, you're going to have 12 months to decide if you're leaving. And if you stay on that land, you're going to be a U.S. citizen after 12 months. This was written by a man named Richard Goodman. He did a presentation at the University of Texas, but I want to read this. Mexican concerns for the security of their land proved to be well-founded as the treaty ushered in decades of land seizures, squatting, and violence from the Anglo settlers who felt their victory in the war entitled them to the Mexican-owned land. Despite treaty guarantees, many Mexicans were forced off their land by laws, courts, prejudice against them. Within decades, Mexican Americans went from holding a clear majority of the land in the region to owning almost none of it at all. Because they came in and they wanted that land. Your ancestors died honestly. They bought it, however they did it, back in the Spanish and land grant and Mexican land grant. They paid for it and owned it. That treaty is telling them that they are going to have rights. Those who shall prefer to remain in the said territories may either retain the title of rights of Mexican citizens, they were Mexican citizens, or acquire those of citizens of the United States. But they shall be under the obligation to make their election within 1 year from the date of the exchange of ratifications on this treaty. And those who shall remain in the said territory after the expiration of that year, without having declared their intention to retain the character of Mexicans, shall be considered to have elected to become citizens of the United States. In other words, if your ancestor lived on that land in 1848, in 1849, if he's still on that land, he automatically became a U.S. citizen. No ifs, ands, or buts. So if your ancestors stayed in that 1849, 1850, he's a U.S. citizen. That's what it says. That's what the treaty language says, and that is important. We're going to come back to this later, and you're going to see how it ties into you today. Because all of this information was compiled to, in my way of thinking, to protect those Mexican citizens, but they didn't want them to be there a year later. Let's be honest, they just had a war in 1846. 1848, they hated Mexicans. They did not want Mexicans around anymore. The Anglos wanted that land. That's the bottom line. But these people hold titles to that land. All right, getting interesting, right? Article 9 also has the language in there to protect them. But I want you to notice this article. Article 10. Stricken out. What do you think that's all about? Why would they strike that article out? Why would they take an article that they just got done ratifying with the treaty and say, we don't want that? We don't want Article 10. I'm going to tell you. The problem with this is Article 10 had guarantees. Wow, that's an interesting word in 1848. That guarantees for you if you stay, become a U.S. citizen. The guarantee is that all land grants awarded and land ceded to the U.S. citizens of Spain and Mexico. Did you see where it says the citizens of Spain and Mexico? By those respective governments, Article 8 guaranteed that the Mexicans who remain more than 1 year in that ceded land would automatically become full-fledged United States citizens. Or they could declare their intention of remaining Mexican citizens. However, the Senate modified the Article 9, changing the first paragraph and excluding the last two. Among the changes was that the Mexican citizens would be admitted to at the proper time to be judged by the Congress of the United States instead of admitted as soon as impossible as negotiated between, this man's name is Trisky. He was the American that negotiated with Mexicans. And the Mexicans had the issue. What's this all about? What they're telling you this is this. They're not going to give a Mexican person a guarantee. They didn't want Mexicans on that land. So they struck it out and said, there is no guarantee. And in 1848, your ancestors couldn't speak English. They couldn't read or write English. More than likely, I mean, there might have been one or two. But think about being them. And you're on that land. You own that land. You've been on that land for 40, 50, 100 years. And all of a sudden, you've got people telling you things have changed. How do you think your ancestors felt? Do you think they were confused? Do you think they were scared? You better believe it. Because you see, this was the mood of the country. In 1855, right up here, they passed a law called the Greaser Act. It was an anti-Mexican law that they passed in California, thinly disguised as an anti-vagrancy statute. The law defined a vagrant as all persons who are commonly known as greasers. That's what they called you back then. They still call you that here now. Or the issue of Spanish and Indian blood, because if you had Spanish and Indian blood, they didn't like you. That was it. And who go armed and are not peaceable and quiet people. So if you make some noise, you can see you would be in trouble. This law was passed in California 7 years later, in 1855. What do you think is the mood of the country about Mexicans? This is living, and this is factual. You can find this in any library, even Wikipedia. Look it up. It's called the Greaser Act. The Vagrancy Act, also known as the Greaser Act, wrote racist language in the law of California. The law went by the Greaser Act because the law contained the word greaser, which is found in Section 2. The California Law Review explains the Treaty of Guadalupe Hidalgo ended the U.S. invasion of Mexico and resulted in Mexico's cession of the Southwest, which led to the Greaser Act of 1855, an end result of the Mexican-American War. I'm trying to paint the picture of what your ancestors were dealing with. They were not alive. They were not liked at all. But they owned that land. That's where the rub comes in. Because people like Richard King, Mifflin Kennedy, Stillman, I could name a whole bunch more, but those are the three big ones. They didn't want Mexico owning thousands and thousands and hundreds of thousands of acres. That had to be changed. So you know what happened after that. Because of this treaty in 1848, you could tell that there was problems from the very beginning. I mean, they were passing laws against Mexicans. They were stealing the lands. That professor told you that you basically almost within one generation, 95% of every acre of land that was owned by your ancestors was gone. Either through chicanery. You know, does anyone know what chicanery means? Chicanery is an interesting legal term they use. Chicanery means by deceit, by trickery. Do you think your ancestors were tricked at all? Do you think they could read and write English as well as the Anglos? Do you think they weren't in a vulnerable state in their lives? Do you think they weren't losing their lands and didn't know why? Squatters were coming in, squatting on their lands, and they were Anglos. And you know, you're talking about 6 guns and rifles. It was not easy. Because your ancestors, again, I want to say it again, were mobile. They didn't want all this. They didn't ask for this. Remember I told you before how nice it was at that time between 1765 and 1846? Because nobody was bothering them. Now they got nothing but problems. And it's terrible because they don't know what to do. So what happened is they started complaining. 20 years later, they were still complaining. the United States and Mexico got together and said, hey, we got problems. These people, they're still complaining. They're saying their land was stolen, they're saying that this and that and whatever. The animals were taken because back then, see, wealth was described in 1868 like land. Not about how much money you had. It was described by how much land you had. Land was powerful because it was a sense of wealth. If you had animals on there, man, you were really a big shot then. And a lot of your ancestors did have they had cows and steers and whatever they had, mules and horses. They had all of that, and they lost it all. So they went to this U.S. Mexican Claims Commission, and they said, you know what, we got to do something. These people are complaining. Okay, let's do this. Let's start writing down their names. Longoria, Chapa, Guerrera, Cavazos, everybody that comes in and complains, we're going to investigate. So they did. Till 1934. I mean, you have to see these things that we've seen, these records and documents. They even admit this man lost his land illegally, the Anglo stole it from him, he should be given X amount of dollars because of the land value, $45,000. It's written down in the General Claims Commission of 1868, 1934. You can actually still see these documents. Elmer has these documents. Go ahead. These documents are held at the
National Archives.
National Archives. Okay? National Archives.
In
Washington.
Actually, it's College Park, Maryland. It's just right outside of Washington.
Yeah, it's something in that little in D.C. Elmer spent his whole vacation 2 weeks in D.C., and you're going to see some interesting documents that we're going to show you. There are original documents, copies of, that are held in the Library of Congress. And you're going to see how that's going to tie this whole thing together to amazing. All right, so for years, they're complaining, and nobody's getting nothing. They're just, complaining, they're documenting. Yes, he got ripped off. Yes, his land was stolen. Yes, his horses are gone. But nobody did anything about it. They just recorded everything. When this happened, this was the President of the United States. President Calvin Coolidge. I don't know too much about him. He's probably very unknown to a lot of people. And this was the Mexican president, President Alvaro Obregón. Okay, let me share with you. I don't think Obregón lived very long, so I don't think much got done under their watch. But these two men were the ones that were in charge of that commission. And they kept saying, you know what, we're going to resolve this, we're going to resolve this, we're going to resolve this. 1868 went to 1888, 1888 went to 1900, and people are still sitting there complaining. Your ancestors were literally went to Mexico. Why would they go to Mexico? They're U.S. citizens. Why would they go to Mexico? Because the United States told them, hey, in this country, we got a system. It's called the court system. You got a complaint, somebody stole your land, take them to court. Whoa. Here's our ancestors, can't speak English, can't read or write English, and they got to go to court. So they hire the nearest Anglo lawyer who fleeces them and takes their money and say, you don't have a case. Or represents them not too well and makes a deal with the court. As you well know, that's part of the conspiracy against Mexicans at that time. Yes?
I see documents that Flores and things like that where where the white people are calling themselves power attorneys. Is that what you're talking about? Representing power attorneys.
You want to answer that, Omar? He's our technical guy.
Normally, a power attorney would be a relative or somebody known within the family that would represent the family.
That's not the case.
No.
But in our situation,
Then
it's someone
it's probably there was fraud that was committed there. And that is one of our venues on the lawsuit that we're going to present. We'll explain that at the end, but that was the end of the fraud.
And we're going to do that. All right, so these guys did nothing. And then they said, okay, let's finally resolve this. We're going to go to the United Nations Convention of 1923 treaty between Mexico and the United States of America. And let's get this settled once and for all. There's too many Mexicans complaining, and they're all complaining in Mexico because the United States won't help them, because they have to go to a court system they don't understand. Try to put yourself in that position for a minute. You can see how frustrating it was for the people, how difficult it was. And by now the Anglos were rolling. Richard King, Stillman, and others, they had no mercy on these people. They took their land and they slept perfectly well on their pillows. They had no problems. Go ahead.
you want to talk people with guilt for their land as well?
Yes, we also have that as part of the lawsuit of the injustices that we have. We have so many people that have documented murders. We were at a meeting in Corpus Christi, and John Falcone was there, and there's so many books being written about the injustices and atrocities that happened to your ancestors. Elmer has do we have that picture of the hangings and all that, or do you want to throw it up there real quick?
Sorry.
Huh? Yeah, well, unfortunately, it was going on everywhere. Yeah, you're right. But anyways, the atrocities were happening, and that's the other problem that we know is an issue, because they were defenseless. These people had nobody in their corner. Remember, nobody liked them to begin with. They were aggressors. All right. So remember this here. This treaty here is a United Nations treaty. What does that mean? Why is it important to have this as a United Nations treaty? Let me tell you how treaties work. Treaties are when two countries or more get together, and they have to come together with some kind of an agreement. But to make sure that agreement is involved with fair play, they bring this one in, right here. Now, some of you, we've been schooled a few times by people in the crowds. Some of you may say, hey, there was no United Nations in 1923, and you'd be absolutely right. There wasn't a United Nations in 1923. But the United Nations claimed this treaty in 1952. And the reason is, the story is going to explain why it brought it all together. So, for you that are smart enough to know that the treaty wasn't, the United Nations wasn't in fact existing, it's true. But later on, they adopted it and took it in. They also sent one member from the Hague, Netherlands, as a representative to make sure that both countries were doing fair things between the people that were involved. Because there was a lot of people involved in this treaty. Okay. This is called the Mexican General Claims Convention. This is part of that treaty. When I say it was called the Convention of 23, General Claims Convention is nothing more than a treaty, a specialized treaty. In here, it had Article 8, Article 9. These are also, you can find them on the web, or you can find them in the libraries. These are pretty easy to find. In here, this is what was being discussed. They were discussing if they could come up with an answer on solving the problems of the injustices that happened to the people. There was two categories of people. U.S. citizens against Mexico, Mexican nationals against the United States. Make sure you understand that. It's very important. You got it? U.S. citizens against two categories. That's all there is in this treaty. In this treaty, they also had a third category. And that category was businesses. And it didn't matter if they were U.S.-based or Mexican-based companies. We have examples of some of them, and they had all different types, you know, whatever was going on in the 1920s, you know, the different types of, you know, stables and horseshoes and stuff like that. But they had businesses that were affected. Why is it important? Because at the same time that these articles were being written, they had just got over the revolution in Mexico. And the Pancho Villa and the Zapata tore up a lot of stuff on the border. And that's part of what they wanted to claim. So they separated that portion of it. They didn't want to get involved with the revolutionary injustices, and they just wanted to deal with whatever was on the plate, and those were businesses, third category. Right here, down here, on Article 9, it's important for you to read with me. The total amount awarded in all cases, remember, they're going to make a decision. If your ancestor lost their land, we're going to come up with a price and give you the money. In all cases, decided in favor of the citizens of one country shall be deducted from the total amount awarded to the citizens of another country. What they're saying is, if there's $1 million worth of claims against the U.S. and $500,000 of claims against Mexico, then you know the claims would negate itself, and Mexico would only owe $500,000. They would sort of balance it out and pay the difference to the people. Okay. In any case, the Commission may decide the international law, justice, and equity require the property or right, that would be your ancestors' lands, be restored to the claimant. Wow. Really? King Ranch? You're going to give it back to the people? This is 1923, remember, right? But that's what they're saying. They're saying, let me go back to this. Require that the property or right be restored to the claimant, in addition to the amount awarded in any such case for all losses or damage sustained prior to the restitution. In any case where the Commission so decides, so decides the restitution of the property or right shall be made by the government affected after such decision has been made as herein below provided. The Commission, however, shall at the same time determine the value of the property or right decreed to be restored, and the government affected may elect to pay the amount so fixed after the decision is made, rather than to restore the property or right to the claimant. In other words, if your ancestor had 100,000 acres, we're not going to give you the land back, but we're going to pay you what it's worth. Okay? In 1923 money. Got me? Remember I told you the United Nations involved? His job was to get a fair market evaluation of what the land value really was, because they wanted to do the right things for these people. In the event the government affected should elect to pay the amount fixed as the value of the property or right decreed to be restored, it is agreed the notice thereof will be filed with the Commission within 30 days after the decision, and the amount fixed as the value of the property or right shall be paid immediately. Upon failure so to pay the amount, the property or right shall be restored immediately. What does that mean? That means that they didn't give you the whatever your ancestors' land was worth. You either get the land back or you get the money. But they got 30 days to do this. Now, you're thinking, that was 1923. I never got no money. My family never got no money. Yeah, you're catching out on that one. So this language is in the treaty language, and you can look it up. It's also in the Library of Congress.
Nothing happened. No one got paid. Nobody got a dime from that commission. They had an agreement, they signed it, and guess what? Nobody got paid. And I don't think we got that land back, our ancestors, or my relatives. So what happened? Nothing happened. They didn't pay anything. And that was where this is an injustice in 1923. Because they wrote the language, they set the rules, and you know what? They couldn't even abide by their own treaty. You read it. You read it with me. It's pretty clear, concise to me. So what? Go ahead.
So, there's a list of all properties that were valued where it was at 1923.
We're going to get to it.
Okay, but my question is this. Was they used as collective litigation?
We'll get to that too. All right. We'll get to that. You jumped a little bit ahead. So nobody got anything. And then in 1934, 11 years later, this guy gets elected president. Does anybody know anything about his name? Anybody? This man's name is Lázaro Cárdenas. And this man was a hell of a man. I didn't know until I read his whole biography about him, and I was blown away. Because this man is going to change the whole world. He's about to do this in 40 years. You're going to see this, and it's going to blow your mind, because this man was called the people's president. I love this. When he got elected, that's the next slide. This is the vote for Lázaro Cárdenas. He got 2,225,000, and the nearest man to him, Antonio Villarreal, 24,000. I'd say he got, that guy got blown away, man. Didn't have a chance against this man. Lázaro Cárdenas was popular. They loved him. And he thought he was the hero that Mexico really needed. And this man is about to turn the world upside down. And I guess a lot of you never even heard of him. You're never going to forget this man, because he is going to change what happens in history. Lázaro Cárdenas, as you can see, was an overwhelming favorite. And he was the people's president. There's a little history. You can look it up online, Wikipedia. Type his name in. Read about him. They love this man. This man was a general in the army. He fought against the Zapata's army and Pancho Villa's army, but he fought with the Mexican army. He was a loyalist. He believed in his country. So he had a great career. He was involved with another man named Gaius, and he became like Superman. Everybody loved him. He's about to do something now. It's going to be amazing. He is a very smart man and a very educated man, but he loved the people, and he stood up to people, and they loved him because he had guts. He had whatever you want to call it. He had guts. In 1938, does anybody know what this word means? Expropriation. Anybody know what expropriation means? Nobody? If you look it up in the dictionary, expropriation is a taking of something. And he was taken something because he had had enough. Now remember, when he was elected in 1934, who do you think was coming to him because he was so popular? Your ancestors. Why were they going to him? Because they said, we need your help. They made a treaty in 1923, and they won't even give us the money they owe us. Who made that treaty? Mexico and the United States. He's the president now. He don't want to hear all that. Because you see, Cardenas was a very
He knew the first thing he wanted to do was get teachers, more teachers in Mexico, because he thought education was the way out of the problems in Mexico. And he wanted to get more intelligent people in Mexico by getting better teachers. He also was taking the land from the rich and giving it to the poor. The poor loved him. But the rich people didn't like him. He was making enemies. But he had a problem. He had a problem because he was the president and there was problems in Mexico. And what that problem was? Oil companies. Oil companies were giving him a pain in the neck because they had workers working for Mexican citizens working on those oil companies in Mexico, in American oil companies, and he knew that they were cheating these people. He filed a lawsuit. It went to the Mexican Supreme Court, and he won against the law, the oil companies. They were furious. They were furious that a president would stand in the way of the oil companies of America. How dare you? He said, but you owe these people this money. The court judged in my favor, and you owe them that money. You know what they said? We didn't pay them. Have you ever heard of this history? Has anybody ever heard of this history? This is the history that nobody's been told. That you never knew is going to affect your ancestors.
It has affected.
Huh?
It has affected.
Yes, sir. Absolutely. From 1937 to 1945, I want you to get an idea of this. Oil was starting to become real important. This man over here is the Secretary of State. His name is Cordell Hull. He is FDR's right-hand man. FDR is Franklin Delano Roosevelt, the most famous president probably in the history of the United States. And Cardenas had a problem here, because when he nationalized the oil wells, the United States said, what are you doing? You can't do that. He said, yeah, I can do that. And I'm going to. The oil companies went back to the United States, and he told them, when you leave, the only thing you're allowed to take is the clothes on your back. Because they threatened that they were going to take all their equipment back. He said, everything stays here in Mexico. Your oil companies, your riggings, everything stays here. You're only allowed to take your clothes. They were furious. This is part of history you haven't been told, but you can look it up. I mean, there you go. Let me read this for you. On March 18, 1938, Mexican President Cardenas signed an order that expropriated, remember that's taking, the assets of nearly all foreign oil companies operating in Mexico. He later created Petróleos Mexicanos, Pemex, a state-owned firm that held a monopoly over the Mexican oil industry, and barred all foreign oil companies from operating in Mexico. All foreign. That means British Petroleum was down there. There was Great Britain had oil wells down there. They had Royal Dutch Shell for their expropriated properties, but supported Mexico's right to expropriate foreign assets as long as prompt and effective compensation was provided. What does that mean? That means, okay, we know you got the right to do this, but if you do it, you got to pay the loss. You think Cardenas is going to pay? You guys know the government of Mexico is probably better than I do. They weren't exactly excited to give oil companies money because of the way they treated their workers. So Cardenas, he wasn't playing ball at all. So this man, Cordell Hull, Secretary of State for FDR, has a meeting. He has a meeting with the President of the United States at that time, 1938. You remember the year? Oops, 19, oh, brother. And those four men probably are not even known. They're going to decide to fate their ancestors. That's what it's coming to. And what they decided is, what are we going to do about Mexico? They kicked out all of the American and foreign companies out of Mexico. 1938, this guy wanted a war in Mexico. He wanted a war in Mexico in 1938. By the way, you can look it up. He's got memoirs that are also in the Library of Congress. You can read them. And he tells you in there that he wanted war. Because he said, you can't let Mexico get away with this. He told FDR, if you do this, Bolivia is next. Venezuela is next. Remember the year, 38? This is not today. This is 1938. Nobody had even talked about this. So this was an amazing thing going on that was going to prompt possibly a war with Mexico. Wow. What do you think so far? Getting interesting? You're about to see where the wheels of this about to hit. All right. So now I set the table. You know what's going on. Things are not good. Mexico is taking a stand. And this guy has to make a decision. And this is important to read. Why did Franklin Roosevelt, no friend of the oil men, defend their interest? Oil was not a strategic commodity to Washington in 1938. The U.S. was still self-sufficient, and in fact, he imposed tariffs on lower-cost foreign suppliers to protect U.S.-based producers. Franklin D. Roosevelt, therefore, had little to lose and slightly more to gain than using the power of the United States to pressure the Mexican government. Moreover, the expropriation gave Franklin Delano Roosevelt a credible excuse to threaten to suspend silver price support. Why is that important? Because Mexico used to sell silver. That was one of their big commodities. Silver, gold, that they had tons of it down there, 38. Except, which he could use to pressure Senator McCarran. He was trying to use some type of leverage to get somebody to do something and to get it out of committee. They had a bill in there. But this is the important part I want you to pay attention to, because this is where it's going to be twisted. Right here. Britain, Great Britain, England, however you want to call it. Britain, unlike America, vitally dependent on its oil lifeline from Mexico, particularly in light of the German military buildup. In 1938, was Britain at war yet? No, they were at war. But they knew what the Nazis were doing, because the Nazis started moving in 1937, and they saw the Nazi movement, and they knew they would probably be next. But, as life would have it, Dennis is throwing them a curveball that they don't know how to deal with. This man, for what he did and how he did it, when he kicked that oil company out, those oil companies, all the oil companies, they had a parade in downtown Mexico City for 6 hours, and over 100,000 people were paying homage to the greatest president they ever had in 1938. Guidance was a hero. They were in the streets, and they actually have it on the video. They have a real video of that march in 1938 in Mexico, the plaza, the presidential plaza. They actually have that video, and the sound isn't real good, but you can see those people, and they loved them. They said, finally, somebody stood up for Mexicans. You remember I told you about this Ukraine independence? At first, the oil nationalization and expropriation of the 38 earned Cardenas great respect among Mexicans and in many other Latin American countries. I told you they were worried about Bolivia, Venezuela, and others. In later years, however, Cardenas' oil policy proved to be unpopular. Why would it prove to be unpopular? Does anybody have a clue? I'm going to tell you what. 2 years, they're going to take this hero that they had 100,000 people celebrate what he did, and they're in 2 years, they want somebody else to take over, and they want to get rid of this guy. How did that happen? What would he need to do? I'll tell you what he did. Oops, we're too far now. Let me back up. Some reason I can't back it up. Can you back it up? Put it back up. What happened is this. When he went out and did all this, he was a hero. Guess who was watching? Other countries? Other countries? Yeah, you better believe it. Was the President of the United States watching him? You better believe it. How about the oil companies? Do you think they were watching? They were not only watching, they were going all over the world trying to boycott. Everybody had boycotted Mexico, and they got people to boycott Mexico and put up embargoes. So Mexico would be troubled by what they've done. There's only one little problem. 1938, I talked about Great Britain. They needed that oil. 1938, Winston Churchill got up and said, we no longer want to deal with Mexico. We're cutting off political ties with Mexico. We no longer want anyone to deal with Mexico or buy their products or do anything that would benefit Mexico. Why would Winston Churchill do that? Because if you look at the research, and I'm amazed, we cut this thing down to 1 hour and a half, but it's really about a 5-hour presentation when you put all the facts in. Because you see, Winston Churchill knew that Mexico was the second largest producer of oil, and they were the #2 supplier in Nazi Germany. And he knew that if you're going to supply the Nazis, they're coming for Great Britain. Was he right? Was the Nazis coming after Great Britain? You better believe it. Because in 1939, France and England declared war on Germany. And let me tell you something. All of a sudden now, oil is important. Because what you don't know through our research is Japan, Italy, and Germany were buying up all the raw products all over the world. As fast as they could get it, if the United States paid 30 cents a ton or whatever it was for raw materials, copper, iron, whatever it was, they did 50 cents. They were taking as much raw material for the war. Why? Why would Germany, Italy, and Japan do that? They wanted weapons. They wanted airplanes. They wanted, aircraft carriers. They wanted to build, and they knew they had to have the raw material. What do you think FDR thought about that? You think FDR said, oh, wait a minute, hold on here. What's going on here? Because Nazi Germany was a machine that needed oil. Because when they invaded the Soviet Union, I think it was 1939, that's 38 or 39, they were going after the oil fields because they needed as much oil as they could get to create all the fuel. They needed raw materials, copper, brass, all those bullets, whatever. They couldn't get enough, so they're starting to raid Latin American countries, and now FDR is getting the picture, and Winston Churchill is having meetings with this guy. So when he's having meetings with this guy, I'm talking about the other guy, when he's having a meeting with Winston Churchill and FDR, that's what they're talking about. We got to do something. I told you, Great Britain broke off all relationships with Mexico. They boycotted. I'm going to tell you something. The production level in Mexico's oil, it was 100% when all the oil companies, American oil companies were there. The moment the American oil companies left, do you think those Mexicans knew how to run those oil wells? No, they didn't. The production level actually fell about 40 to 60%. And they were losing money left and right. They couldn't feed them, the economy enough because they couldn't get the oil out. They didn't know how. They didn't have the technical experts. But guess who did? A country named Nazi Germany. They told Carmen to stand up. If you have a problem with the United States, who are figuring out where they're going to build a submarine base in Baja California to be able to attack the United States from Baja California, which is the next peninsula. So you see, this was getting serious, and FDR and Churchill knew it. They knew they were in trouble. The bottom line is, how do you get out of this mess? Whoa, this is a problem. Because you see, Mexico was neutral. In 1938, they were neutral. We're not with the Nazis, we're not with America, we are neutral. We just want to sell as much oil as we can. But the United States, Great Britain, and all the oil companies, and all of Europe started choking Mexico off, and people were starting to starve. Your ancestors, that were living in Mexico in those days, when the oil companies started shutting down those days and there was no work, Mexicans were starting to starve. What was the problem with that? Well, let's just go across the border and look in the United States. What was going on in 1938? A depression. There was no work in the United States. They had soup lines everywhere. They didn't want anybody coming into the country saying, I want a job. That's the last thing they wanted, and FDR knew it. He says, I can't take any Mexicans over here. They're starving down here. There's no work. The whole world is choking Mexico off because they're feeding the Nazis oil. And the whole world wants them to stop feeding the Nazis oil. And you know what? Cardenas says, we're not stopping because that's the only way we can make money right now. We need this money. If they want to buy our oil, it's for sale, we sell to everybody. We're neutral. You can see this is turning into a problem. So 1938, 1939, 1940 goes by, and everything is still jammed. Mexico is starving. The United States has got a problem they don't know how to solve. There's people that want a war with Mexico. What to do? Remember that guy I showed you, Cordell Hull, Secretary of State? He told those people, we need to go down there and just show Mexico we can flex on them. They'll stop as soon as we pull our troops out in Mexico. You know what Morgenthau told them? I think Morgenthau was the ambassador to Mexico. This is also recorded in his memoirs. Morgenthau says, you do that, you're just going to push them back to the Nazis. And you're going to have a bigger problem with the Nazis coming in. Because that's what the Nazis wanted. Because the Nazis said, you need to oil underground, listen to technical advice there, and we'll buy all the oil we can get from you. And we're going to put German troops on the border. Okay? Think about that for a minute. What would this war have been like? Or what would it have looked like if those German troops would have been on the border? It would be a different war. Completely different war. So you're all seeing the dilemma. This is a world problem now. This is everybody. There's no way out of this. Your ancestors are going to solve this problem quickly by being guinea pigs or victims of scandal. This man was elected in 1940. This guy, that is out of the picture. I told you they didn't want him anymore. People were starving. They wanted to get rid of that president. Get us somebody that can, get back to normal in Mexico. Because everybody's boycotting us, and nobody's letting us buy, this and that, and they're starving us. And Camacho takes over. Camacho was Cardenas' right-hand man. He was a friend, and also in that same army, he was a commander or a general like Cardenas was. But he was a good friend of Cardenas, so he wanted to do the right thing. The difference between Cardenas and this guy is this guy was a politician. And that's where it gets interesting. Because you see, he inherited this mess in 1940. Now put yourself in Camacho's hands. You're inheriting a country that's starving. There's nobody buying any of your products. You got no income. Your national debt is through the sky because you're borrowing money to keep everybody alive. And now you're the president. What are you going to do? And everybody's telling you stop selling oil to the Nazis. He kept selling oil to the Nazis. And I'm going to tell you how that is all going to wash out. It's going to blow your mind. So now you see this guy trying to pluck it. In 1940, he turns out to be the answer. Because, you see, Cordell Hull, remember the Secretary of State? They went to him and said, we're going to make a deal. A deal with me? What kind of deal do you want to make with me? He said, well, you remember this treaty? Well, this is about Camacho. He was good buddies with FDR. They approached him and they said, we want to make a deal with you. He said, what's that? He said, we want another convention. Another convention? But you had the 1923 convention. Everybody was supposed to be paid. Why are you coming to me now? Because we want to take care of those Mexicans that didn't get their money, your ancestors. We know we wronged them. We want to make it right. But Camacho was no dummy. Camacho was no dummy because he said, well, what's in it for me? Because you see, the treaty language in 1923 says you could never reopen that treaty again, ever. That language is in there. It states that once the United States ratified that treaty and Mexico ratified their treaty, that no one could sue them, no one could come back and claim any problems with it, and you were done. And now you're going to open it? There's a problem. Because you see, when treaties are made between countries, there's a little law called the statute of limitation. And treaties all have 6 years of statute of limitation. So if you create a treaty, everyone that has a problem with that treaty has 6 years to go up there and file their complaints. But in 1923, Mexico and the United States, what did it say in their language? You're going to get the money. You're going to get your land back if we don't have it within 30 days. They thought checks in the mail. So the people didn't know, they just waited it, and nothing came. So they're thinking, why do I got to have another treaty? Because we're going to have a treaty that's going to benefit you. And that treaty is going to help you in your situation. So now, if you're Camacho and you've got all these problems, and somebody's telling you, we got a deal, are you listening? What do you think? What would you do? Because Camacho had people who were silent. Think about it. This man is a human being, and he's got millions of people that are in trouble and starving. But he got this guy's hand, and he's got this guy's ear, and he says, okay, let's do it. And this one is going to be called the United Nations Convention of 1941. Treaty between the United States and the United States of America and Mexico. So they created a new deal. There was all kinds of problems with this because, you see, technically, they couldn't reopen the 1923. It was done. 6 years had been gone. But as long as the two countries agreed, and nobody had a problem, they could open it back up. Because the United States said, we want to make it right for your ancestors. How would the United States say that? Why? Think about this now. Why would the United States say, we want to make it right for those people? Why is it? You knew they didn't care about us. Because they had something they wanted. They wanted to do something and they knew they had to do it this way. Because you see, FDR couldn't take the money and give it to the oil companies. In 1938, you're going to give the oil companies money? Because that's what they wanted from FDR. Does anybody know how much money is on the record that the oil companies wanted? $425 million they wanted from the United States. And they said, if Mexico doesn't give us that $425 million, we want war. This is the history that you haven't been told. And it's in the documents. It's on the web. You need to understand that this is the dirty secret. Because you see, the oil companies didn't want a deal for money. They wanted that land back and they wanted that oil back in Mexico. That's what they really wanted. Unfortunately, this treaty is setting the tone for the biggest scam ever created, the biggest fraud in the United States history. And we're suing the United States. If you get a lawyer that's got guts enough, we think this case is winnable. And I'm going to tell you why, and you're going to see why in a minute. This is the convention of 1941, and here are the languages in this article. You can read them on the web, but I want to read you this. All the claims of nationals of either country which arose subsequent to January 1st, 1927, and prior to 1940, and involving international support to either government or the government as a consequence of damage to or loss or destruction of or wrongful interference with property of the nationals of either country. What type of people are in this agreement? The same as the 1923. Do you remember what they were? What two categories of people were they? They were Mexican nationals versus the United States, and United States citizens versus Mexico. Was your ancestors in that category? Huh? Did somebody say no?
United States citizens against the United States.
Oh, wait a minute. Say that again?
United States citizens against the United States.
There's no such category in the treaty. No, because you see, if you have United States citizens against the United States, it's illegal. Because you can't make a treaty with United States citizens with another country. So they have to be called Mexican nationals. But does anybody remember in 1848 what Treaty Guadalupe said to you? That your ancestors were U.S. citizens. How can that be? Because here it's telling you one country against another and blah, 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 and they're setting the tone because this is the only way they can cut this deal. And this is fraud. Because your ancestors were not Mexican nationals. They were U.S. citizens. And they had no business giving the money to Mexico. If you're a U.S. citizen today, the United States, there's only, I'm going to jump ahead a little bit. There's only one way the United States, government, state, or city, or even county, can take your land. Does anybody know what that is? There's only one legal way you can lose your land, your house, and everything to the U.S. government, the city, or the state. What is it?
Condemnation.
Eminent domain. Did anybody else say that? Oh, okay. Because that's in the Fifth Amendment. The only way your land, your house, your whatever you own can be taken from you legally is through eminent domain. It's the language in the Fifth Amendment. It states in there that if the U.S. government, the city, or the state wants to take your land to build, let's say, a museum, but your house is in the way, that the museum is for the betterment of all. So you're taking your land and your house, and guess what? You got nothing to say about it. They come out, they give you a fair market evaluation, and they give you a check, and they say, get off your land, we own it now, we're going to knock it down. And if you sue, you're going to lose. Because that is the law. The Fifth Amendment states that they can do that. But do you think your ancestors were given a check through eminent domain? Do you think they were told that they're going to have a... See, the only way that government can take your land now is they got to give you a contract and a check. Do you think any of your ancestors got anything like that? Right. Why? Because they were called Mexican nationals. Why is that important? We're going to get to that in a minute. But this is the article that I told you where they're wiping their hands here and they're saying, when we're done with this treaty, nobody can complain. They're going to have the same language as the 23, where nobody can sue them, nobody can complain, nobody can do anything. Once this deal is done, it's done. And there's two categories in there. No businesses this time. This time, these two categories in the 41 Convention are this. Expropriated land. Remember what was the word expropriation mean? Taken land, which was your ancestors. And the other category was for the countries. They were the U.S. citizens that they're talking about in this treaty. I'm dead serious. Okay. In here, this language, this is Article 2. I wanted to show you Article 3. Oh, this is it. This should be Article 3. I want you to understand this because this is very important. The United States of America and the United Mexican States, in virtue of the stipulations of this convention, reciprocally cancel, renounce, and hereby declare satisfied all claims of whatsoever nature of nationals of each country against the government of the other, which arose prior to the date of the signing of this convention. Whether you filed it or not, formulated or presented, formally or informally, to either of the two governments, except those claims which are in Article 2 of this convention. The two governments agreed that with respect to international obligations, the rights of each government towards the other, the stipulations of this convention supersede. What does supersede mean? What does supersede mean? Anybody know? Supersede means that whatever we did in the 23 convention, this takes precedent. This rules. Whatever we did in 23 doesn't mean nothing anymore. So now this treaty is the rule. It rules. And guess what? This treaty, it doesn't tell you you're going to get paid for this. There is no language in this treaty about you. There is a credit against the sum of $40 million of United States Carriage Article 1 of this, and the sum of $3 million. This is just issues between the two countries. But there's no language that says your ancestors get anything, anytime, anywhere. Why is that important? Because they want to practice. They take the money. And you know what? People do everything else. But in this treaty, there is language that states that Mexico has to pay the oil companies within so many years. And that language is very strong, and it also has a penalty that if Mexico defaults, that they're going to get compounded interest to the oil companies. So the language is in there to protect the oil companies. There's no language at all for your people, for your ancestors. Are you seeing the injustice now over there? This is still the convention of 1941. Let me see, here we go. Maybe I can see where, this is more, here are the installments that Mexico has to make. Remember I told you, 1 year after this, Mexico had requirements, and I think here you can tell, right here, in the event of failure to pay any annual installment or installments when due, the United States, Mexican states shall pay interest at the rate of 1% per annum of the amount of each installment. So there's penalties if Mexico doesn't pay the oil companies, but there's no penalties for you and your family. Because you know why? There's no language in it. In here, this is the United States-Mexico Convention relating to the final adjustment of certain unsettled claims. The U.S. government wished to avoid further confrontation with Mexico at the time President Franklin Delano Roosevelt was preparing to enter the war against Hitler. What year was it? 43. What year was it? 41? Were we at war yet? This treaty was ratified on November the 19th. Japan invaded Pearl Harbor on December the 7th. We were not at war. But they knew. Did you see this document? They knew this guy, Roosevelt, was preparing to enter the war. They said, he knew he didn't get this deal done. And that's why he used your ancestors to do this deal. Because you see, the United States couldn't give the oil companies the money. Not while you got a depression going on. So you Mexico U.S. oil industries, you see that? Assisting? What do you think that means? Decided to remit all debts by the Mexican government to the U.S., which were mostly related to agricultural products. Do you think Cardenas was smart? Camacho was smart? You can't believe he was smart. He got a good deal. Because you see, the next picture shows the amount. I'll get to that in a minute. Trees versus the Constitution. I'm going to back this up for a minute because I thought we had this back me up there where I went. There's something important for you all to know. What happened is this problem that was being created by the two governments was creating a problem, but they had to get the deal done because the war was about to start, and they had to get the oil. And the oil companies were furious because all their equipment's in Mexico. How are we going to get oil from the United States? They got to get their equipment back, or take over the oil wells, but Mexico wants to do that. The problem is this: when you think about FDR and what he's being told by different people, by his staff, think about what options he's facing. He's got Churchill in one ear telling him, stop Mexico from giving oil to the Nazis. And he's got the oil companies in the ear, we want war with Mexico. You never heard that. None of you have heard that. Why is that important? Because it shows FDR was desperate. He had to cut a deal, and he had to do it quickly. So that's why they opened the 41 Convention, and they used your ancestors. They called them Mexican nationals, and at the same time, they turned around and gave the oil companies the money. By the way, it actually tells you about the oil companies in the original treaty. They're a couple of pages long with the oil companies, what they're going to get and how they're going to get it. And FDR and Cordell told them, you better take this money. They got $40 million. Mexico gave them the $40 million. Why did Mexico give them the $40 million? Because your ancestors, where's that book? Is that here? Do you remember the 1923 convention? Remember I told you that the United Nations had to create fair market value to all of the land. They had to give your ancestors are in here. I'm going to pass this one around. Just look through. You can find your ancestors. I'll pass it in front of you. And you can look at it. I just want it back because these things walk away. Trying to hang on to them. But if you want to look for your porción, you can look it up and then pass it to the next person. This is what they owed you. And they agreed at that time. Well, we'll get to that. You're jumping ahead of us a little bit. Hang on. So this bottom line is, they have a fair market value for everybody's land, and it's worth $193 million. If you add up all these numbers of all of the porciones, and I mean all 433 of them, it equals $193 million. In today's money, that would be billions. Okay? Billions. Huh?
And that's just for Texas.
That's just for Texas. So you can see page after page, and there's huge numbers in here, what the land was worth. Yeah, fair market value, and this was $193 million. Well, what happened to the $193 million is part of the mystery. Because Camacho had his hand out, remember? They wanted to keep Camacho from going to the Nazis. So if they greased his palm, okay, I'll take the $193 million and give $40 million to the oil companies. Because you see, the oil companies wanted payback. They wanted Camacho to pay back because the rest of the countries, Bolivia, Venezuela, all of them, Brazil, they were watching Mexico. Gotta remember the year, 1938, 39, 40, they were watching Mexico because if Mexico got away with it, they were going to do it. And the United States couldn't have that. Because if you had all the oil companies lose all over the world, It was signed, sealed, and delivered by both countries, even though they knew these people were not Mexican nationals. They were U.S. citizens, like that lady said. Your ancestors were U.S. citizens. I'm going to prove that in a minute. The bottom line is, you got away with it. 74 years later, you're still sitting here and you never heard of this. They got away with it. So the three of us put it all together. And I know this sounds far-fetched, but trust me on this. This is going to cause a lot of problems in the United States. We finally woke up as people. Okay? So then $193 million is going to Camacho's hand, and he's going to give 40. That's easy. If I give you $193, give her 40, what would you say? And you keep the rest. God, he's a king. So Mexico wasn't stupid. And then they got rid of the national debt. Or remember, they paid it off for Mexico. Why? Because they wanted Mexico not to turn to the Nazis. Because Mexico was threatening to go to the axis of evil. Germany, Japan, and Italy. It was tense. It was real. They were worried because the rest of the Latin American countries were ready to do what Mexico did, and all hell would have broke loose all over the world. This would have been a different war. Trust me on that. All right. So then we go to this. Remember I told you there was no problem with this treaty? There's only one problem with this treaty. And that lady over there, I know, she's watching. She knows, she's reading. This is the language of treaties versus the Constitution. You can look this up there on the internet everywhere. Because the United States has rules. When they make treaties, they've got rules. You've got to abide by them. And one of the rules is this. That if you make a treaty with two countries, you cannot violate the Constitution. If you do, the treaty is invalid. If you violate the Constitution, the treaty is invalid. I'm going to read this to you. This is the case. This is called a landmark decision. It's a case law. This lady, I'll read it to you. On June 10, 1957, the court issued a landmark decision in the case of Reed versus Colbert. The case involved a woman named Colbert who was charged with killing her husband while they were living in England, and he was serving in the U.S. military. There was an agreement between the United States and the UK that any crime committed in Great Britain by members of the U.S. military or their dependents would be tried by U.S. military tribunal. This Colbert had been found guilty of murder by such a tribunal. But this case is going to take its turn. The U.S. Supreme Court overturned this conviction and found that no agreement with a foreign nation can confer power on the Congress or any other branch of the government which is free from the restraints of the Constitution. The court also stated that an international accord that is inconsistent with the U.S. Constitution is void under domestic U.S. law, the same as any other federal law in conflict with the Constitution. Does everybody understand what that means? That means if you make a treaty and it violates somebody's constitutional rights, that treaty is invalid. But you got to prove it violates the constitutional rights. We're about to prove it. This is the Fifth Amendment. The Fifth Amendment, rights of persons. No person shall be held to answer for a capital or otherwise infamous crime unless on a present resentment or indictment of a grand jury, exception in cases arising in the land or naval forces or in the militia, when in actual service in time, this covers a lot of stuff, I'm sorry, or a public danger, nor shall any person be subject for the same offense to be done twice and put in jeopardy of life, limb, nor shall any witness against himself, nor shall be compelled in any criminal case to be a witness against himself. But read the words in red, because they are vitally important. Nor be deprived of life, liberty, or property without due process of law, nor shall private property be taken for public use without just compensation. If your ancestors were U.S. citizens, were their rights violated? I told you I'm going to give you the evidence. You're going to tell me who the villain is. Were they Mexican nationals as they treated like you saw? Were they Mexican nationals? Remember, the treaty said that you got to be for 12 months, right? The interesting thing about Texas is this. I've been all over the place. And the first thing, when I sit down with people, they want to show me all of their papers. They show me this, we're showing this, we're showing that. They're telling me like they're going to get the money tomorrow. And I look at it and I say, wow, it's very interesting. Yeah, we got this, we got that, we got this, we got that, and this is for showing 20. I mean, they already have it figured out to the, to exact what they're going to get, how they're going to get it. But you're waiting for a check. The problem is, there is no check. You can show it to all the people in the world, and guess what? It will give you nothing until you prove something. And that is proving that your ancestors were U.S. citizens. How many of you can do that? Raise your hand. Tell me. I can. How many of you can prove that your ancestor living on that land for more than 12 months was a U.S. citizen? Because you see, if your ancestor left 11 months and went back to Mexico, he gave up that U.S. citizenship. So if you go to a court of law, you have to prove that your ancestor was still on that land. How many of you can do that? How many of you think that there's a way to find out? Go ahead. Okay. Did he live on that land? Did he leave after 11 months? Prove that. You going to say something? All right, so you see the dilemma. Because the Constitution says, if you're a U.S. citizen, they got no business giving money to Mexico. $193 million. Well, that causes a problem because I know a lot of you probably know who this is. It's called the ADR, Asociación de Reconocimiento. They filed a lawsuit in 1984, and they lost. But they tried. And I got to give them that. Arnulfo and myself went to see Mika Zarate the other day. She's still alive. She's 95 years old, and her daughter is 75, and still going. They're still talking about everything. But they tried, and they lost. Because what they did is they sued the United States, and they sued Mexico in the process, in a U.S. court. The problem is the court ruled that they have no jurisdiction over a foreign government. They have no jurisdiction. They can't make another foreign government do something, even if they have a ruling. So they threw the case out because it is out of their jurisdiction to rule against a foreign government. Go ahead. We're not done yet. Okay, give us a little bit. Give us a little bit. Let me tell you something. I wouldn't be here if there wasn't a chance. Okay?
You got to finish out the story.
So now the ADR tries and they fail. They lost their lawsuit. And in that lawsuit, interesting things were said. This is the statement of that lawsuit. By the terms of the treaty, Mexico released the United States from liability on all claims, including the 433 Texas land claims asserted by Mexico against the United States. In addition, Mexico paid the United States a lump sum of $40 million and was absolved of liability on all claims maintained against it. There's the $40 million that we're going to. They got their money. sovereign assumed by the obligation to satisfy the espoused claims of its own nationals, which the United States did within 7 years. Remember the treaty 6-year window? It's got a 6-year statute of limitations. Shortly after the treaty was signed, Mexico acknowledged its obligation by presidential decree by Manuel Avila Camacho. And assurances have been made by the Mexican government to the individual appellants as recently in 1970 that compensation would be forthcoming. What is the problem with this? This is written by a federal court. This is not Germany. This is not Japan. This is your court system. This is what they answered the ADR with. And they said, hey, checks in the mail. Just go to Mexico and get your money. Why don't you go to Mexico? You see where this dilemma is? Well, we can't give it to people. They were Mexican nationals. Oh, really? Because you can't prove they're U.S. citizens. Pretty smart, aren't they? Pretty smart. It's a game, but we're going to teach you how to beat this game. All right, let's go on. Here's the next lawsuit. This is called the Alliance of Descendants of Texas Land Grants, who sued the United States in 1994. What they said, this time they were on the right track. They said, hey, you violated these people's 5th and 14th Amendment rights, and you have to compensate these people because you gave the money to Mexico. Well, let's tell you what they said. This is also at the Federal District Court in Washington, D.C. Here's what they said. There's 3 little points. A 6-year statute of limitation covers claims before the United States Court of Federal Claims. In other words, hey, there's a 6-year clock that already expired. Yeah, you people are wasting your time. Indeed, the 1941 treaty, this was written by a judge, by the way, a federal judge. Indeed, the 41 treaty's terms will release the United States from all liability for Texas land grant claims from Mexican citizens. Oh, really? Let me read that again. Indeed, the 41 treaty's terms release the United States from all liability for Texas land grant claims from Mexican citizens. What are they talking about? Who are they talking about, Mexican citizens? You see, the only way they could deal with Mexico directly is you had to be a Mexican national, your ancestors. They couldn't be U.S. citizens because it would be illegal if they did that. So they scammed you. They scammed all of us. I mean, our ancestors, they were powerless with this. This is way above everybody's head. But now you're learning. The claimants taking claims thus accrued. Oh, wait, let me finish that there. I'm sorry. Yeah, I got it. Okay, the third one. The claimants taking claims thus accrued when the 1941 treaty went into effect. At that point, the 6-year clock began ticking. Because the 1941 treaty went into force in April 42, any takings challenge based upon it must be necessarily have been filed no later than April of 1948. And that's when I was born, April of 1948, to be honest with you. Okay. Because claimants' claims accrued decades before they filed the suit, the trial court correctly determined that the statute of limitations had expired. Let me tell you what that word, statute of limitations, really means. Those are really intelligent people that figure out how to keep you from getting justice. They put these little cute terms in there that is going to be a stumbling block for you. To me, an injustice is injustice. I don't care how long it's been. But they like to have a little clock and say, oh, you're too late. Not too fair. Any questions so far? You guys are interested in this, right? All right, here we go. How do we prove that your ancestors are U.S. citizens? What's this all about? What's a poll tax? Anybody help me? Come on, tell me. Somebody talk. What's a poll tax? A back then would be, you know, you could buy a loaf of bread for it, or maybe less. The point is, this is a racist term. Does anybody know when the poll tax started? This is important to you. No one's ever told you this but us. It started in 1835. The reason they had poll taxes was originally to raise money for the war, the Civil War. So they would create a poll tax that would allow them to get extra revenue. And people would have to pay so they could get enough ammunition, rifles, whatever. And that poll tax also was the way to get people in line. Because in 1902, Texas said, from now on, if you want to vote, you have to pay poll tax. And if you are a white man and had a relative born before the Civil War, you didn't have to pay poll tax. Only Mexicans and blacks were going to pay poll tax. Are we still talking racist here? Okay, big time, right? Now you see what you're up against. There's a lot of history to this, and it's all true. So this poll tax was put in place by southern states as a condition for readmission. This whole concept was totally to keep you from voting. A citizen paid the tax for registering, and then annually thereafter, some laws required payment up to 9 months before an election. And this is how they kept you from having the power to bring in the right person to help you with the poll tax. It was way over everybody's head. So now you know you have a poll tax. We said, hey, didn't our ancestors pay poll tax? So that man back there, Elmer, stand up, please. Please stand up. Took 2 weeks of his own time and vacation and drove his whole family to Washington, D.C. in the Library of Congress and took, how many pictures? 1,500? 2,000?
3,000.
3,000 digital pictures of documents. And I said, wow, 3,000 pictures? I can't even imagine looking at 3,000. Of course, my wife hasn't got that many in the house. But I woke up at like 2 in the morning and I was sleeping and I woke up out of dead sleep. Because you see, that was my dilemma. How do you prove your ancestor is a U.S. citizen? I'll tell you. Elmer, how do we back this up? Well, what are you doing here right now? Do you see this right here? That's P-O-L-L-T-A-S. And this is, I don't know how to back it up. Can you start over again? This is a document from 1854 of Cameron County. And guess who's on that ledger? Our ancestor, Jose Manuel Camacho. He's on this, and he paid a poll tax in 1854. Does that prove he was living on that land? That's 1849? The U.S. has got a problem because nobody's ever thought of it before. The poll tax is going to wind up going to the big one. The next dollar is the bottom of the list. But this is what you have to find. There are 433 land grants. We don't have the manpower or the resources to look up everybody's poll taxes. You need to do that. Yes. I'm telling you in a second. They want to know where can we go for the poll taxes.
You can go to the Texas Archives. They carry just about every poll tax in every county, every state.
Ancestry has a lot of it too.
Yeah, Ancestry, yeah. The more of us that
Yeah, Ancestry does, and I'm not sure about Family Search, that's the Mormons.
That's what they told me. National Archives and the Texas Archives and also this week you can click on Family Search.
So is that calling it?
Family Search, what's it called?
Ancestry.com. No, I know what that one, but the one you said before.
it's right next to the Capitol building, and it's on the first floor, and you can search it online and look for the county that you believe that you're relatively safe, and they have official cases. They have it all on film. And this is, we lived there 20 years from the very beginning to 1868.
So let me ask this.
Go ahead.
We have to find the poll tax for the property that was taxed.
Whatever your land grant is, I don't know where it's at, what county it's at, and who it's registered to. You have to get either the originator or his son or daughter within 1849 and up. Actually, we've got some in 1857 and 1872 where other documents are available for our ancestor personally. But that's just ours. We want everybody to have this flag. Because if you're going to be able to get into a court of law, you got to prove that your ancestor is in there. They're not going to say everybody gets this. You got to prove that your ancestor paid a poll tax. The problem is, you will think, not every county has them available. That's another problem.
There's some kind of stuff in there. That's good. I was checking online at the Texas Archive, poll tax, they have that in there, and they have a list of all the counties that are there. Cameron County, they had 1 year missing, I think it was 1867, they didn't do that. But they had some better.
So, do we have to look for a particular date and year, or is it just
49 and up.
49?
1 year after the Treaty of Guadalupe. Remember, the Treaty of Guadalupe guaranteed Mexican nationals to become U.S. American citizens 1 year after. So it's 1849, February 2nd. Okay, 1 year after.
At least.
At
Say
least.
like mine, is that 1849?
Well, actually, there's some for 1848 where they're really poll tax.
And also, the next ancestor probably paid it after he married.
What they might be getting a little bit confused about is, see, whenever they do, for example, they do the research, they go down to land ranking. The land ranking usually got his land grant in the 1770s. So if you're talking about after 1849, which Texas became Texas, part of that said in 1846. If you're talking 1849, you need to go up and look at your family tree to see who was alive
Yeah, that's
during
what I
that
said.
period. And then look for them in these records.
So don't just stop at your ancestor that died in 1848. Go to his son, daughter, or whatever. They're probably on the same land, and they're probably paying full taxes too. So you have to take some time to research this, because it is important. I want you to notice one thing. I want to make sure, is Joe, this one's for you. I thought that you would get a real kick out of this. We were looking at this, and we didn't realize it. I said, what do they used to list on the Cameron County, for the taxes? And in here it says cattle, horses, how many cattle and horses they own, and how many Negroes they own. How about that? Negroes. I'm going to tell you something that's interesting. It's probably going to get you mad. But I'm going to say it to you to get you mad. Negroes had a value back in those days. 1859, 1844. They had a value, but Mexicans were worthless. Think about that for a minute. That's an insult to us as a people. So when you look at this important Negroes, there's no category for Mexican up there. You had no value. They could care less about you. The point I'm making is this was all racist. This was all slanted against the poor Hispanic. They didn't have a chance. I'm not saying all the white people or Anglos were bad. Of course not. But the people in power were the ones that were controlling all this. And they weren't doing you or your relatives any favors. Yes. Go ahead.
There are a couple other ways to do the dual citizenship of the ancestors. You talked about the poll tax, and that's one of the most important. But you'll find that some counties did not keep records well, or as you all have found out that these records have disappeared, being burned, houses, courthouses, and stuff like that. We know that Austin is going to be the next one to have these records disappear, because now they're on to what they were doing. They should be careful of that.
it as soon as possible. But another way to find out is a case like this. This is the case of Bronco versus Cavazos, 1879. Litigation, legal litigation. What is that? It establishes a time length of where our ancestors were on that property past 1849, February 2nd. So, that, under the Treaty of Wellington, that makes them U.S. citizens. Remember the wording of the Treaty of Wellington. So it's important for you to look into litigation also, like this. This is for Steve Santo. The track, Bronco, all the Bronco. This is before Bronco was there. There was no Bronco. And this is another way of how to find citizenship of our ancestors through litigation. It establishes a time after February 2nd, 1849, through the Treaty of Wellington. Now if they're involved in litigation, that means they were on that land. You follow what I'm saying? Okay, so that's important.
Yes.
My question is, you had it out there. We're not going to research that anybody that actually money.
You know what? All we had was Cameron County didn't show anybody that year, but we don't know. They had that up there for a reason. So you got to remember, Texas was a slave state. Texas had their own agenda, as you well know, because they entered a civil war on the side of slavery.
These are loopholes that they forgot, and this is how we can get back. But we need to get these documents as soon as possible in order to prove our case. And
here's our best point. Wouldn't it be poetic justice that the full text that they created is going to be the evidence that's going to bring them down? Go ahead, John.
It's going to disappear. As soon as word gets out, it's going to disappear.
Well, we've got documents. If they disappear, they disappear. But, you know, we've got to get the word out because each one of these people that have different land grants, they've got to start researching and find their own. It's a lot, fast, because he's right.
once the word gets out,
We've seen stuff disappear off the web. I'm going to tell you that right now. There's people that know what we're doing, and I know they see the one thing they don't want to do. They don't want to make you smarter. Why? Because they want you just the way you are. Remember, I told you you were noble people. They know your nature. They use it against you. They know you're not like the blacks that's going to stand out there in Baltimore and riot. They know your nature and they use it against you.
now there's a lot of land grabs where they're very free. But let's say we can get at least out of these descendants or the original land grabs, we can get 100 or 200. That we establish a pattern. I'm talking about getting the full text, documentation. That establishes a pattern. And that's why this organization, I got interrupted for my brother's health. But anyway, it establishes a pattern where I lost my train of thought. I don't know. Okay. It establishes a pattern of what was done, and by having 100 different land grants that have full taxes, we're going to include the rest of that cannot find.
Then you can prove conspiracy.
Because that's the conspiracy that I'm talking about. So, but do not fall on that. You got to be aggressive in looking for these documents because you got to help the other. This is about what we're
More documents
sharing,
about
being united.
You remember I told you this is not about the Muslims. This is about all 433 languages. So we have to get you educated to spread the word for us, to get people to help us. Okay, here's what we were just talking about. This is, how do we don't have the justice here on top? You got the rights, got a different one on here. All right, this is the pyramid of justice. It's supposed to have, and I've written up there, but I'm just going up there. In here, it's got racketeering, fraud in the court, deprivation of rights under the color of law, fraud, different cases to prove if you can get from this step of conspiracy, it tells you how the building blocks are to build a case against a country like the United States. Was there a conspiracy? Do you guys think there was a conspiracy? Do you think FDR and his henchmen had a conspiracy? You better believe they had a conspiracy. They knew what they were doing. They weren't stupid. They know that your ancestors were American citizens, but they couldn't allow it to be American citizens. They had to be called Mexican national. So the conspiracy is very apropos for that. It fits in. And if you go to the next one, which we have, all the way at the top, it almost gets to the top, which is racketeering. Believe it or not, if this gets into a court of law, which I don't think it ever will, I think the United States is going to be embarrassed by this. I think if we can prove again that we have our ancestors were U.S. citizens, this will never go to court in my opinion. But we have to file a lawsuit to force it to go to court. And that's what we're working on.
Has there been a lawsuit filed against other land grants to the state?
Are you talking about the state or the federal government?
State.
Go ahead.
So our family thought
We've heard of one.
In July.
We've heard of one. In July?
In July.
I hope that answers your question. But I'm going to tell you the truth. They're few and far between. It's very hard to see the state. The state is one of the worst problems here. And that's why they're in this mess. Because they not only conspired to play ball with the United States, they condone all this stuff. And this happens in Texas almost every day here. I can't believe what's going on here. But again, this is all got to come to a head. Yes.
Let me ask you this. So, like when we talked about when all the properties were taken away,
Yes. Expropriation.
yes, the people didn't know what was going on. They were totally.
Look, here, let me put it this way. In 1941, they come up with this deal. What did Camacho tell the people? You're going to get your money. You read it? You're going to get your money. The United States says, we get the $193 million in Mexico. They're going to pay you. Isn't that what basically? What happened in 1941? They started a war with Germany. In 1941, after Pearl Harbor, 2 or 3 days or a week later, Germany declared war on the United States. Where were your ancestors? Go into the army. They were fighting war. And they were told, hey, you got to go fight this war. Nobody was worried about the checks in the mail. Camacho said he was going to pay everybody. That's why the clock expired 6 years later, because everybody was told, you're going to get the money. They lied to you. You see how it works? Are you picking it up now? So when they lie to all of us, my family, your families, go ahead. Go ahead.
The question I have was, did the white people know that they were taking confiscating on this land? Did they know about all that?
You better believe they did. You better believe they knew what was going on. Let me tell you something. Listen, this is the biggest crime of this is this. They gave Mexico $193 million. There's evidence for that. You saw a court ruling where they even admitted it. And guess what? This is the most amazing part. That Mexico tells everybody, you're going to get the money.
No.
And never pays. All right?
No.
What does the United States say? Hey, why are you coming suing us? Sue Mexico. Go to that court and fight it out. This is what you don't understand. And everybody, I want to make sure you do understand. When they gave that $193 million to the Mexican government, they were keeping people like Richard King, Stillman, and Mifflin Kennedy. They were doing dirty work. Because the government was admitting they took the land illegally. They gave, because they compensated everybody. Because they lost their lands to ill-gotten gains, through chicanery, through deception, through fraud. They did the dirty work for those people. Why? They were powerful. They were powerful people in the States. They still are. So they allowed Mexico to get that $193 million and rob your ancestors
It was advertised in Philadelphia, New York, to come to South Texas, and the land was up for grabs. That's what I'm getting
What
at.
year was that? On that, anybody have a question? Okay, I have a question. How does that affect, because Texas gave, okay, there was Spanish language which were given from 1770 to
Right. Go ahead.
then there was Texas language that was when they took the northern group down there to see if the people were actually living there, if they were taking the Texas tax for that land. That was around 1870. How did that affect compared to what when you're talking about these treaties? Is it concerning the people that were Spanish language, the ones that were Texas language? So not all of them got a Texas tax.
I'll let Alderman answer that.
How does that affect? Does it only affect the Texas language that got the patent, or the ones that were Spanish language?
Well, in the case of, like, Barbaretta, the one by Eads, it was the Indians that sued the tax.
Oh, 1870.
No, actually, it was 1911. And I think that's the problem, a lot of these, they got the land back under the assuming of the original.
Okay. Did that answer your question?
Yes, because when it seems like the name of what happened, because we're talking about a hundred different languages.
And one of the main problems was in 1905, Texas passed a law which has the validity of the Spanish American language. I have that somewhere. And in there, it said that in order for you to get a patent on your land grant, it has to be done duly, without fraud. There's a whole list of things. And like Barbaretta, the Kennedys had possession of that land, but they had a lot of fraud on their time. So I'm pretty sure the state of Texas was in the issue with a lawsuit.
You're talking about over 100 languages. What happened to one may not necessarily happen to the other, but generally speaking, what you're speaking of is the ones who had gotten put on a few different Texas language.
Okay, do you remember earlier on I talked about the General Claims Commission?
Yes.
They had all those complaints. They had hundreds and hundreds of people that were claiming fraud, deception, thievery, killed, murdered, and shot off their land, hung on them. They actually hung the Anglos hung the people, and they tell the rest of the Mexicans, if you want to end up like this, stay on your land, and you'll end up like this. In other words, these people were terrible people, and your ancestors were caught in the middle of this mess. Now, the problem with it is 433 land grants is what we represent.
Which is what's here in this book. Okay. It represents what their question is, all 400.
By the way, if anybody wants to buy one of those
Buy
books,
the United
we
States,
sell
buy
them for
Mexico.
$20. If you're interested in one, we have a few available.
As a
It
product.
tells you the price of your land grant and your fortune that you were supposed to have gotten, and that's a copy of an official document that was signed by Mexico and the United States.
There you go.
I think that was it.
Go ahead. Joaquin Chapa? Yeah, you know what? You come up here, we got extra ones if you want to look through it.
We looked through it, and there was no Joaquin Chapa.
Yeah,
There
there
was,
Okay. Let me tell you something. There's about 2 or 3 different versions of that. It may not be in there, but we have another version that we would have to look at. So some of them are not 100%, and that's all because of the way they were done. You got to remember, the United States did their own, and then Mexico did their own. So, it
So
was...
what version is this, Mexico or
I think this is the American version.
American version?
Yeah.
Do you guys have?
That was the copy that
the
was sent.
Mexican version that we can buy off?
I don't know if we have it or not. Do we have it? We don't have the printer. He's going to show you something here. Here's the Mexican version.
that have the walking stop of there on there?
It's
Oh, okay.
pretty big.
So it's not enough of that order.
Well, that's, remember, they didn't make it easy.
That's why it's
That's long too, all those pages, look at all the pages.
Well, those pages, can you find it with the, what's showing, or not so important?
Yes, yes,
58, Michael.
Well, you know what, I tell you what, if you want to talk to Elmer after the meeting, if we get a picture of it, we'll give you a picture of it if we can.
Yeah, we didn't have to.
Okay, here's the problem.
there's very little chocolate.
I'm sorry?
There's very little chocolate, because I come from shop a line. There's very little.
Joaquin?
Yes, I saw it.
I've had people that are naming the wrong person in their genealogy for the original grantee.
So about Joaquin this shop.
Business is product.
Well, that was, yes, that was, yes, that's the farm. He had it all like
And I want you to remember, these mean nothing. Can't prove that your ancestors were U.S. citizens. So that's the key to this whole meeting, is that's how you're going to beat the United States. You got to prove that they're U.S. citizens. Go back home, spread the word, get the poll tax with your ancestors. If we can get 200, 300 of these, then we might have a chance to go up against the United States. I think we got a chance because we're going to be going to a meeting in September the 24th in Albuquerque, New Mexico. We're meeting with a big junta of all of the land grant heirs or land grant activists in Albuquerque, New Mexico on the 24th, 25th, and 26th. And that's supposed to be a big meeting. So hopefully we can get some more information there. How did you like the presentation? Did you find it boring or interesting? Okay, now this is what I ask you. This is what I tell you. Everything that we have told you here are just words. They don't mean nothing unless you do something. You've got to tell your families. And I don't mean just the old people in your families. I mean the young guys, the kids. They need to understand where you came from and what happened to your family. It's important. If you're ever going to get justice, you have to get united. That's what two countries, one lie is trying to do. We have only one agenda. We're not asking for 10% or 20% or 30% of your money. We're asking for you to unite and stand with us. You're welcome. He's going to talk to you about that. I'm done. Thank you very much. Anybody want to know anything later with Elmer? Feel free after the meeting. We only got a few minutes. So hopefully we can get this in. Great.
4:05, and we'll be out of here by close at 4:30, so I gotta make it short. Anyway, the main thing here that we have to learn here, that we try to teach, is history. It's going in a different direction that we have all been brought up with. Understand this. Throw that away, let's go this way. This is the new direction. We have the knowledge. We need this. We're going against the biggest country in the world, the United States of America. We're going against the state of Texas. We're going against petroleum companies. We're going against the Kennedys. You don't think they're big? Oh God. They got blacklisted us in Newsweek. That's why you don't see the news here. We only have one ally, and that's UBC. And unfortunately, they were not able to make it here, but we have been interviewed by them, and they're our ally. And rightfully so. This is why it's important to unite as Latinos, land grantees, the voting, what I started talking to you about. Very, very important to become a block in voting. Why? I didn't get to that. Now we're getting to it a little bit. Because this next presidency, you're going to see 2 Supreme Court justices retire that are in place. It has been a very conservative means Republican. Republicans will not support what we're doing. Okay? Liberals, Democrats, progressive, they will support more of what we're doing in this cause. So your vote does mean something by installing a president that's going to be right for our cause, will help us because they will have to install 2 more justices. And what does that mean? When our case goes to the Supreme Court, we will have better chances of being understood on the injustice. Do I make that clear?
But yeah, we do, and we do have a lot of proof of the injustice, and a lot of people that will back you up, and everything that has been said. But what is the holdup, man? I mean, we've been fighting this for years and years and years.
We're not united. We're not united. That's the holdup. We're not united. This organization.
Hold on. You sense a little bit of frustration, right?
For many years, yeah.
Okay.
But you see, every...
No, they don't like it at all. But they don't do that. They don't care. You can win with them.
I'm going to get into that.
I'm
going to get into that.
Maybe I'm just shooting for myself or maybe for everybody else, but a lot of times, when it comes to differences and different backgrounds, you know, a lot of us have proof that at one time we were seeing royalties, our families, so it goes different directions. You know what I mean? Like, we have royalty proof, we have check proof, but nobody wants to listen. Nobody wants to take the case. Why? Why are they afraid?
That's what you're talking about, making sure the right people are in the office.
That's part of it. The politics is part of it. This is why we have to become a block of Latino descendants, Latino. Not only for the injustice that came out of these land grants, there's also injustices that are happening right now. My son got killed by a Mercedes PD. Okay? Here's an example. I did not see an injustice. I did not see a rally, a demonstration like in Ferguson. Okay? This is the type of example. 2 years, November 28th, this November, he got killed in his own home. Okay? This is the sort of situation, and yes, is anybody protesting? I lost my son just recently. And I'm a bit advocate in this. This is why I'm trying to ignite you in trying to unite you. Unite you in trying to unite you, because I cannot do it by myself. And I'm going to tell you how we're going to get to this. Because you need to spread the word. Did you like this presentation? All right.
I mean, it was educational as far as...
That's the purpose. That's the purpose.
Yeah.
And it's got a different angle on how to fight this case, okay? And that's the purpose. We believe that we can win this case, but not by ourselves. Okay? And it's for all land grants. Just like I told Patricia Champion, genealogy, she was asking the questions to ask her. This is why it's important about this law. Because the United States and Mexico agreed on that. How many land grants? 433. Okay? Not one is going to be left behind on the Texas land grants. We're going to Albuquerque, hoping to ignite them on the same bandwagon that we're trying to create here. Now, here's the deal, folks. We need to spread this information and ask us to come back again. Help us through donations or you guys rent the avenue here. Rent the avenue. Help us get here, because it costs money. Illinois. He comes from Illinois, Chicago, Illinois. He's told so many times he's driven, I've flown to Illinois and driven back to him. All of this costs money, hotels. This place, yes?
Your fees are informing to the fire.
Right.
And you don't understand that the fire is on our kids, which is something that we're fighting for. The money might not come tomorrow. This is something you have to teach your kids to fight for and educate them in case they need a help fight for them as well.
Right.
It's not about money tomorrow, it's about money.
It's about justice. It's not about the money.
Correct, and I'm going to get to that. I'm going to get to that.
Well, yeah, because we're gonna be here forever, but
Yeah, we got
at
20
least
minutes.
they have the education to keep fighting.
All right, here's the deal that I'm trying to get at. You guys, I appreciate you people being here, Primos, to be here and hear us out. If you like the presentation, take it out to the people. Get more people. We want to spread it again. Let's get another meeting and let's build up this auditorium. If not the Alamo Dome. Okay?
We're looking
Let's
for
build it up.
volunteers.
Okay, where am I going with this? I'm going to tell you. This organization, we have two plans, Plan A and Plan B. Plan A, we just told you about Plan A and how we're going to take it. Okay, but it's going to be funny. So how are we going to collect that money, raise that money? This is a proposition that we have to look into. Okay. By us uniting, there's 9 million, 15 million descendants, but 9 million are voters, not quite the 9 million are voters, okay, of direct descendants to any other Hispanic country. Now, if we can get 100,000 people out of these 5 million descendants, primary descendants, not secondary, and each of those primary descendants puts in $100. That's it, $100. 100,000 people.
But
Can I say it?
sure, go ahead, man. I just wanted to kind of
Look,
mention something that this isn't something that we haven't heard before, and that many of us haven't done before, you know?
if you hear me out, that's Plan A. Okay? Please hear me out. Please hear me out. And then I'll try to answer any questions outside, because we got to be out of here in 15 minutes.
We got time. Go ahead. Go ahead.
If we're being
Finish up so they can ask the question. Go ahead.
But keep your questions and I will answer them. We love for questions to come in and we try to answer them. Okay? $100, 100,000 people. Do the math. That's $10 million. $10 million. Okay. We're going to divide that into 3 ways. Out of each, I'll pay the $100 too. Out of that, out of my $100, $33.33 is going to go for Plan A. What is Plan A? Just told you. That's fighting this case here in the United States. It has to go all the way to the Supreme Court. That does not mean paying the attorney. This is filing fees, transportation fees. If you, sir, got an important document and you need to testify in Washington, D.C. or at any federal court, and we need your testimony, we will pay for you through this fund to get you there. Okay? This is some of the money that's going to do this. Okay? Provided that, because your testimony is going to be important to all the land grants. You follow? Okay. This is what that third of the money will be doing. The attorneys will be paid by contingency. That's what we're working on. Contingency means that they get paid at the end of the trial. If we win, they win. If they lose the trial, then they don't get paid. Simple as that. Okay. What is Plan B? Let's say we lose the case at the Supreme Court. Because if we lose it at the federal courts, we're going to do it and still push it through. That's part all the way to the Supreme Court. Then we lose it in Plan, we lose it in Plan A. We lose the case. We take it to Plan B. What is Plan B? Automatically, the case will be filed in the World Court in the Netherlands. Okay, it will become a centerpiece of the World Court. That will take money in transporting attorneys to go to the world head. Testimony. That $133.33 of my $100 is for Plan B. Now that's $66. What is it? 66. Okay. Now we've got a third. The last third. What is that about? That's another $3.33 million. And that's to run this organization. To help run this audience, to rent arenas, Alamo, to unite 100,000 people. Also, within this money is going to be used to charter buses. Let's say we need, there's more people out of the valley. We're going to charter 10 buses going into Austin. We're going to demonstrate in Austin. There's maybe only a need of 3 buses in San Antonio, another 5 buses out of Houston, and so forth. That third is going to come out of there to charter these buses. It's not going to come out of your pocket anymore. So actually, it's going back into your pocket. You'll have transportation. When we get there, if we have to spend another night after the demonstration, then part or all of the hotel for one night will be paid by the organization. Okay, so part of the money is going back to us to help. So you see, we're putting up how the money can be used, how it can be raised. He has people want to donate the $100. It's getting wrong. We're not accepting that yet. Why? We don't have an attorney. So we need to get your $100 into this organization. We'll ask for donations. We need donations to run it right now. Otherwise, it's coming out of my pocket, his pocket, and his pocket. He just went to Washington, D.C. and got that place. By the way, that last part also, that other 3 million, will send in a group of people to Washington, D.C., to Austin, to investigate poll taxes for each one of us. You follow now where this is going? We get a committee. Okay? This is how the money is going to be used wisely to. Now, this only can work if we can get 100,000 or more. If we get 10,000, it's not going to work, guys. It's not going to work. It won't work. 10,000 times 100, you won't do the number. Where we're looking at is at this number, okay, to start. Yes.
But I can say right now, the only way we found out about the community was because we were in the court, and we're kind of one of the people that work on the counter. But already coming up on Saturday. So I had no idea, we had no idea. I'm just wondering how these people found out about it. How can we take it out there besides our house?
Right. We need help. We're young. In this organization, we're young, and we need help. In administration, we need help in lots of areas, advertising, in uniting people. So yes, you have an idea. If you have an idea, please bring it up to us. And okay, hold on.
We got another question. Go ahead. You done?
We get people that way. Let's live. We get people.
I don't think this will work too well.
Right now we're live.
He was having a technical problem, so I'm not so sure that it works well. Right, Elmer?
Right.
Go ahead, pose your question, sir. You want a book? Yeah, our book will take care of you.
I'll take care of you.
Let me say something to you. We'll give you the books. I mean, you know, we'll look to you. This lady and that man over there are the people we're looking for. I'm going to tell you the truth. All my life, I'm 67. I'm a little older than I've been there. This is all we were told about this. We grew up like you. I was born in 5. This guy was born in 5. Elmer, I don't know. He was born on another planet. That was
Fort Sam. Fort
Here's my
Sam.
point. You showed passion. You showed passion. You need to help us. You need to step up. Get us San Antonio chapter. Get your own people. Do your own thing. If we're going world press all over the world here. We need help. And I'll be honest with you. We've given. Remember I told you at the end of the meeting? These are just words. You have to use them and work with them and help us. Why? Because we can't get a hold of everybody. Look, we had a meeting today, and her point's well taken. We don't have money to buy radio time and advertise that we're going to have a big stuff.
We're being blacked out by the news. Believe it.
It's very difficult for us to know this. Okay, remember we're in the valley. Something about the news. Go ahead. Look, let me say something. Let me say something. What this lady brought up is she has brought up what many women and other people have brought up other men. Every meeting we go to, aren't you scared you're going to get killed? I'm going to tell you what, we decided to do this for one reason, for our families. We decided to fight instead of accept this fate that's illegal and immoral. So we said, there's risk to this. But the more I talk to you, the more you hear. Are they going to kill all of you? I'm hoping this spreads. That's what we're trying to do. We were in Corpus, we're in Brownsville, we're in McAllen. We're going all over the place. Hopefully we get to Laredo next. The more we talk about this issue, the more you hear. See, the problem is, remember Martin Luther King? You can kill the dreamer, but you can't kill the dream. That's what we're giving you.
We have 3 venues on the lawsuit that we're going to propose. Okay? That's the land grant, all land grants, the oil, gas, and electric minerals. Right now, there's a lot of electricity being produced by windmills in King Ranch and lands in that area. A lot of money is being made. So that's energy. The injustice. Now, let's go back to the minerals. We're not talking like Eileen Popper is talking about the unclaimed minerals. We're talking about every well that has been in existence since the beginning of the discovery of oil in the state of Texas, in these land grants. Think about that. That is very huge.
And this is for you two, specifically, because you seem like you're really into this. There's one thing none of you really have realized yet. We can disqualify and invalidate that treaty. That 193 million in Mexico, that went to Mexico, I could care less about it. Because if that treaty is found to be invalid by a U.S. court, they got to start over and negotiate on today's dollars. And that was just land prices you saw for $193 million. Now they have come across. This is a $1 trillion case. That's why we need your help. It can. I'm telling you, you can achieve this, but you've got to prove it first, and that's what we're into. Prove it.
So let's unite. Let's get more people. I would love to get invited to San Antonio into this full auditorium or a bigger one.
That's up to you guys. Yeah, no, it's fine. If anybody wants to volunteer,
I will give cards to hold off, and my phone number is my phone number is there. I'm the manager. I take all phone calls. Elmer's not going to call. Any other questions?
Yeah, one thing, before question, I want to show you something. You guys can pass this real quick. We went to the King Ranch, because, you know, this happens to be around where we were at. And we saw this sign. I just want you to look at it and pass it around. 1,020 acres on the King Ranch. Big sign, said, for sale. For sale. Well, let's take a look at this. 1,000 acres or 2,000 acres, I can't remember what it was. $495 million. What do you think that land's worth today to teach your ancestors laws? What do you think of all of the things he talked about? The oil, the minerals, all the energy, gold, silver that was found on that land is worth what they cheated you out of. If you're not mad, you need to get mad because you need to be smart. We're not asking you to be violent, we're not asking you to do anything.
We've got 4 minutes. Go ahead and do this. Here's for the books if you want to have these.
She wants to.
People need hours on these books. This is how we're running our organization. Deputy Sheriff back there who also have
From 2 countries, 1 lie. Dos países, una mentira. I want to thank you very much for your precious time. And I wish that somehow you guys can all come together and, you know, form a great force.